that was on a cable, unless we're doing like, every once in a while we'll do a small, short, one-song thing for TV or something. Michael will go, just put me on a cable, you know?
Right.
For the normal tour, to do Michael's solo, we were using an old bass Roland synthesizer, which had a 64-pin plug-in. And I had to have a extra long cable made special for that, you know? Normally we're on a 45-foot stage, and Michael's cues, he would start out and do beginning, here's Mike, do the second shot at the beginning of the solo, center stage, and the third one at Edward's mic.
Okay.
So anyways, Michael would go out to his mic and do the first thing, and he would pull the bass up in the air and then bring it down, and then we'll go and hit it, and it'll go, Then go to the second one and, middle stage and do the second one. Well, anyways, to make a long story longer, at the US Festival, we're on a much, much bigger stage, and we didn't even think about it. We didn't talk about it. So Michael just went out to do his natural cues, and he went to the first mic and did it, and then he went to the middle of the stage, and as he was heading over to Ed's mic, I realized I see the cable coming up off the ground. I go, oh, my God, this is a much, much wider. I think it was 65 feet, extra 20 feet or something, or 70 feet. But Michael gets there, and he didn't realize that the cable was already totally taut. So he plays a riff, and then he goes to pull the guitar up in the air for the theatrical part of it, and he yanked it up really quick, and he just pulled the housing, the whole fucking housing and the pin, right out of the bass. And, of course, he's on stage by himself in front of, 480,000 people or whatever, and it goes dead quiet. And I look over, and I see wires hanging out of the guitar and the cable on the ground. I go, holy shit. Michael turned around, so I ran out. There was 3 different parts of that solo, and at one point, he would throw the synthesizer down and he'd jump all over it. He'd throw it on the mat in front of the drum riser. When David would do the toe touch thing, jump off the riser, we had a mat underneath the Marley right in front of the riser. So the second part of the solo, Michael would throw the bass down and, jump up and down on it. I would hit an AV box and I'd be playing a bass on the side of the stage through a fuzz tone, just going, When it went dead, Michael kind of turned around, he took the bass, he went to the center stage and he threw the bass up into the air as high as he could and then got out of the way, and it came down and just sheared off like 3 of the tuning pegs. And then he's standing there and he looks at the audience and puts his hands out. And so I ran out, and Michael looks at me and goes, what now? And I go, go to the next part of the solo. Go to the next part of the solo. And he goes, right. And I go, act mad at me. And he goes, what? And I said, we're in front of 480,000 people. I go, act like you're pissed off and shove me. And he goes, why? And so I pushed him, and I go, just do it. And he goes, oh, I get it. So he pushed me. I turn around, and I go running back to hit the A-B switch, and I look, and he's already running over to jump up and down the bass. I turn around, and I go, wait till I get back there. Anyways, I would love to see this because there's footage of it. We've never been able to find the footage, but Showtime filmed everybody that they put on there, and we were the headliner. So they filmed our entire show. And then just, they end up only showing 3 or 4 songs.
Right.
And I've had people say, well, we'll get you that footage, but I've never come across it.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so then he went and jumped on the bass, and then the next part of the solo had a bass out on the edge of Alex Sturmeiser, and after he gets done jumping on the other one, he picks that bass up, and now he's back on a wireless, and he does the rest of the solo from there.
Wow.
So that always comes to mind because, the biggest audience they ever played in front of, and it was like Keystone Cops. But we pulled it off. Michael's wife said to me when I came back, she goes, oh, man, and I really liked you, too. And then Mike came off stage, and he grabbed me and hugged me and goes, man, thanks. I was hitting a blank. I said, no, what you did was perfect when you threw the bass and when you turned to the audience and put your hands up. And he goes, yeah, but at that point, I had nothing more. I go, no, we pulled it off. And he was hugging me, and Sue goes, oh, well, good. Sue is Michael's incredibly gorgeous wife.
Yeah, she's beautiful. She's great. What was the history behind the Jack Daniels bass?
That was my idea.
Oh, okay.
Born and bred in my mind. A lot of times when the band would fly, the band had their own bus. And sometimes Michael would say, come on the bus with me. And if we had 2 or 3 days of a submarine ride, which is like where you're driving across the country, the band, most of the time, they would tell the road manager, or the road manager would just tell them, I'm going to get you tickets and fly you there so you have a couple days off in a hotel. So one time they decided to do that. That scenario happened. And Michael decided he wanted to just go on the bus. So the only other people on the bus were the bus driver and his girl, who was our wardrobe lady. So Michael said, get your golf clubs and your bags and come on my bus. And if we get there early enough, we'll go play some golf. So we're driving along. I brought a couple things with me. I brought some hash, and I brought Buffalo Springfield retrospective, which Michael was like, oh, that's fucking great.
Right.
So we're sitting there listening to it, and I was smoking some hash because Michael wasn't, because Michael didn't do that sort of thing. At one point, he's handing me this bottle of Jack, which half the time I would pretend I was sipping, but not really, because I'm not a dark liquor guy.
Right.
And he said to me, we got to come up with an idea for a novelty bass, something that people will associate with me, nobody else. And, even if I only play it on one or two songs. And he said, I just, putting that out there, something I want you to think about. Maybe we can come up with something. And he's handing me the bottle of Jack. I go, hey, this is it. And he goes, what? And I said, people, think about you and Jack Daniels. It's well known that you like Jack. And I said, we build a bass that looks like a bottle of Jack. Well, Michael started laughing. He said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He thought it was the dumbest thing that he'd ever heard. And he kept busting my chops about it for a couple of weeks. And I kept saying, no, it's really viable. So he said, I'll tell you what, it's your baby, you run with it. Wow. And then I never brought it up again. But in the meantime, I got together with a guy named Dave Jellison, who was, I believe he was the initial bass player for Rat, when they were called Rat Salad, I'm pretty sure. Right. He was a luthier, ended up being a lighting guy for a while. He also worked at Charvel. So him and I started, brainstorming on this. We ended up putting it together, and I called Jack Daniels, which Michael later on said, we're going to get sued. What about Jack Daniels? I said, that's the first thing I did. I called them. I explained everything. Right. They sent me the artwork. Wow. We made a deal over the phone, a handshake deal, that we would never manufacture more than 3 of them without consulting them again. And so far, there's been 3 of them made. The first one's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Right. Second one is in Michael's collection. Right. In his warehouse. And the third one, the guy who builds his guitars for the last 30 years, John Gadesi, who is the head engineer at Fender now. Right. He built that one when we were with Yamaha, and he was at Yamaha. Wow. And that's the one that, if we take it out on the road, that's the one that we still take out. Wow. But all in all, we were in rehearsal for 1984, and they delivered the body of the bass after it was painted. And I said to Michael, come here, I want to show you something. Before the band started playing, remember I told you they would play in front of 1,000 people? So I opened up the case and showed Michael, and he about, lost his breath. He goes, oh, my God, that looks incredible. So he fell in love with it, and we would only use it, on 1 or 2 tunes. I mean, we went out on the road, and I sent it back to, I forget who, I really don't remember, who put the electronics in, but they finished it up, and they sent it out to us later in the tour, I think about a third of the way into the tour. And we got it when we were filming the video for Panama, when the band's flying through the air. And that's the first time the world ever saw the bass. But it was a cool way for everybody to see it because it ended up in that video, Right, absolutely. But, then Michael started playing it a lot because it was so popular and it sounded really good. Right. The aesthetic design hasn't changed much, but the tonics have. I mean, the first one, we had a Zeta violin system in it where there was a pickup under each string on the bridge, and they all go back to a single volume knob, and you can adjust them. They all had their own little volume knobs you adjust so they were all even in volume. There was a master volume knob that worked off of that. Anyways, the second one we ended up putting a pickup in and a Pizio, and the third one is just straight pickup.
When did Mike become a squire for JD?
Actually, my brother was a liquor distributor, and he sponsored Michael and I later in '84 to become Tennessee Squires. I've taken Michael twice to the distillery. It's funny that there was a picture of Sinatra at the top of the stairs where the old Tennessee Squires room was, and they moved that over and put a much bigger picture of Michael with the bass up there. So Michael's right next to Frank as far as Tennessee Squires.
Well, listen, I mean, who's done more for Daniels than Van Halen, right? I mean, it's like it's become the signature drink of the band.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me, in terms of other rock stars that Michael is friends with, who is Michael friends with that could jump on stage with, other than obviously Sam and Van Halen, those guys? Who will he jump on stage with? Who is he close with that he will jump on and jam with?
Well, when he's asked, he'd go out and jam with anybody. Him and, he was in the house band for Mark and Brian for years. I mean, his bass would be in the middle of the stage, and Jason Bonham would be on the left, and Greg Bissonette would be on the right. And Luke was always there a lot, and Mark Bonet. So him and Luke, they've jammed together a lot. You know what? Michael used to love to go out and jam with the Atomic Punks when Luke was in the band. Right. Ralph's a good old friend of ours, and Michael just loved to do it. I remember the first time he did it, and then after that, Ralph would call me up and say, hey, we're going to be at the House of Blues on Sunset or Anaheim, and if we weren't doing anything, Michael would go, let's go. And he'd go up and do 3 or 4 songs, I mean, Ralph, he had David down so pat. I mean, just incredible. Yeah. What a hell of a great guy. Just different rock stars, Michael loves to play. I mean, he loves to play. I'll give you a perfect example. He's really good friends with John Five. Right. And when John Five does his solo thing, if he plays at the Whiskey, he always calls Michael, and Michael will go out and play the last half an hour with him.
That's fantastic.
And the last time we did it, it was really cool because Fred from Cinderella came out and played the drums. They were upstairs working out the harmonies, and Fred's a great singer. And that was ass kick, man. John Five, Michael, and Fred, and I think there was a keyboard player, I'm not sure. But he does a lot with John 5. Michael just loves to play, but that's something he's done 4 or 5 times. He's gone sit in with John 5, you know.
And how often have you seen Mike play synthesizer on stage with Van Halen?
Just 1984.
Just 1984. Okay.
Just 1984. You know, he played bass on Jump and a couple other songs that were synthesized thing. You know, that was pretty cool, though. We had a second level stage and had the synthesizers up on the top level, but that's the only time I've ever seen him do that. I think he played keyboards on Women and Children First on 1 or 2 songs, but I won't swear to that.
Right.
Because I wasn't there.
Right. And
I spent the 5 years before I went with Michael in the Fleetwood Mac camp. I was Bob Welch's guy, and they also had a management company. I took care of a few of their artists on tour.
How did it come about that Michael sang Somebody Get Me a Doctor on the Van Halen 3 tour?
You know, everybody was supposed to get their little shot, and Michael sings that song so good. There were a couple times where Michael, in the old days, where Dave had like a sore throat, where Michael jumped in and sang that.
Okay.
So the band said, why don't you sing that song? Well, you know, it's a great song.
Right.
The band kicks on it, so he ended up doing that. He still will go out and do that. Like, he got a Lifetime Achievement Award. It was kind of funny, the Vegas Lifetime Achievement Awards, and so Sally Steele said, can you help me convince Michael to do this? So I told Michael, and he said, I'll do it if you get John 5 to play guitar. So I knew John, so I called him up.
Nice.
And John's reply was, I worship at the altar of Michael Anthony. So not only did he come and play, but he also inducted Michael. And it was great. We had Blas Elias on drums, and the first song that Blas said, what should I learn? I said, learn Somebody Get Me a Doctor, you know?
Wow. Do you think Michael will ever write a memoir of his own?
I don't know. Michael's a pretty private guy. I wish he would, but I doubt if he will. Because, like, you know, he's always taking the high road, and he's, like I said, he's kind of private, you know.
How often do you guys speak during the pandemic, now that you're off the road?
Like 5 or 6 days a week.
Oh, really?
I just don't see him as much because I moved up to Glendora, and he moved down to the beach. It was like we switched places.
Right.
But I see him twice a week. We meet up at his warehouse where all his gear is, and I have a little shop there, and, you know, we meet up there. And, I mean, I do stuff for him other than music, too, so.
Yeah.
The warehouse is still up by where I live. He owns it.
Is there any plans going forward for 2021 of going out with the Circle?
Well, as far as I know, hopefully we'll get the tour back going again that we were supposed to do last summer, hopefully by midsummer. It all depends on the COVID numbers and, you know, what Live Nation decides to do. You know, I heard that Live Nation said they're not going to do anything until 2022. Then I heard that with the vaccine that they might try to start ramping up midsummer.
Right.
But, you know, we had a tour that was planned out with Coverdale and Whitesnake and Night Ranger, who are really good buddies. I love those guys. I've known them for 40 years.
Right.
Also, I don't know. I heard they're going to try to see if everybody could reconvene on that. But if not, you know, we'll put together a multi-band tour with us headlining, and we'll be doing arenas, and, of course, the summer we'll be doing sheds.
Yeah. Well, Sam even mentioned he'd love to have Wolfgang play on some shows. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I don't know, but I think that would be great, and I think that's really cool for Sam to say that, you know?
Yeah.
I think that would be wonderful.
Do you think we'll see anything coming from the 5150 vaults? Do you think there's a lot left over there?
You know what? I can't tell you because, you know, I haven't been a part of that world in over a decade, so I have no knowledge of it, and I don't like to talk about things I don't know about, so
okay.
I can't really answer that. I can't answer it only because I don't know.
Okay. What about live recordings? In terms of Van Halen live recordings, was there a lot of stuff left on the shelf? A lot of fans always wonder if there was more live albums that were supposed to come out. People talk about the Oakland show from 81.
I heard that they recorded the whole Oakland show with the 3 videos that came out from Oakland in 1981. If that's true, I'd love to hear that whole show. They were playing at the peak of their game. Those videos, there were no overdubs. That was what went down, and it sounds so good, you know?
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, you know, that's like the holy grail of shows. And interestingly, I've heard that the whole show was not recorded. So it seems to be one of those things that...
Well, I've heard both things, but somebody told me, oh, no, they recorded the whole show. Another good show, you can find it real easily, is there's an arena in Washington where they had a very advanced video system, and they would broadcast the video while the band was playing all over the arena.
Right.
And, of course, they would record it. But they always said they didn't record every single act, but they did.
Right.
So somebody's sitting on top of a gargantuan amount of tapes of different bands. But I've seen copies of that show, and that was a really good show. So, you know, that's something that they could possibly make an album out of.
Is that Washington State?
But I don't know that there's any plans to do that, you know?
Is that Washington State?
No, Washington, D.C.
Oh, D.C.
That's D.C. That's 1982. I've seen that bootleg.
Okay.
It's called the Capitol Center. I don't know if it still exists or not, but
Gotcha.
I said, they would sign a thing saying they weren't recording it, but they always did. There's a lot of bootlegs that came out of there because, somebody had access to those tapes and put them out,
Is it true that Michael collects a lot of VH bootlegs?
Yes, he used to collect a lot more than he did now, but yeah, he used to have a